Jealous podcast.
Oh, we're going.
John,
Hi.
so nice to have you back at the table.
Excited to be back. It's fun over here.
It is fun over here. It's like summer vibes. You have your shorts on. I have my sandals on.
I got my boat shoes on.
You have your boat shoes on. I was going to compliment you on those boat shoes.
Hilfigers, not Sperry's.
Really?
Yeah.
Sperry's can cause like a rash, I've heard, of the foot. I've never experienced it.
Neither have I.
Good, but you wouldn't know because you're wearing Tommy's.
Yeah. Well, I have a pair of Sperry's at home, too. You got to have options.
It's the canvas kind you have to watch out for.
Okay, we're
Seriously, the more you know.
good. The more I do know now.
Exactly. Who are you feeling jealous of this week in the news or locally or wherever?
Oh, boy. Anybody that's been at a playoff hockey game lately. NHL playoffs are in full swing.
It's 900 degrees outside. Hockey?
Yeah.
Aren't we over hockey
Stanley
yet?
Cup playoffs, the battle for the greatest trophy in all of sports, in my opinion.
And why do you think, like, you don't have to apologize. Do you say sorry?
No, I said my opinion's the only one that's right.
Oh, shit.
Or
So
only
you
one
weren't
that
apologizing at all.
No.
Okay, well. Maybe
On
you
that
should be.
note.
Sorry, kidding. Why is it the best trophy?
Because, have you seen it? It's like massive. It's a silver
You
cup.
could take a bath in it, maybe.
You can consume a lot of different things out of it. So each player, after they win the Stanley Cup, each team, every player on the team gets a certain amount of time with the cup. They like get a day or a few days with the cup. So there's stories of guys, eating Fruit Loops out of the cup for breakfast or drinking large amounts of alcoholic beverages.
I'd like to see the cup after dark. We should do a documentary about the cup after dark, what happens in the cup behind the scenes.
The Stanley Cup, for clarification.
The Stanley Cup?
Yes. No, I
Behind
agree.
the scenes.
But yeah, no, I'm a giant
Stanley
hockey.
after dark cup. The Stanley Cup after dark.
This went off the rails really fast.
It always does.
Yeah. No, hockey. Jealous of any fans in the stands right now.
Okay.
How about you?
I'm, in a constant state of jealousy, but I'd say like baseball season is out. I want to get my ass in the stands and I want to watch some baseball and I want a big fat pretzel with some nacho cheese. Yeah. And I want a big beer too. And I can't have it right now.
Soon enough.
July is just around the corner.
So close. But good news for you.
What?
High Cubs are in town through like next Sunday.
I know. Wait, we're going this Sunday.
Are you?
Yes, our family is going this Sunday.
So
Jeff told me about it, and he keeps reminding the kids about it, and I keep hearing it like it's the first time I'm hearing it. I'm like, oh, yeah. And then it just goes in my brain. It goes in one ear and out the other.
Well, so you're saying your schedule's kind of busy then. If you've got a lot on your mind, your schedule must be kind of busy.
My schedule's really busy. Yep, my schedule's really busy.
So then did you take anything away from our guest today?
Yeah, I actually did. Because I'm just going to be completely honest. I drove into work this morning and I was going through my to-do list and I was like getting overwhelmed and I had tears welling up. And I know. I mean, it's all really great things. But our guest today taught us that even if it's all really, really great things, that can still be very overwhelming and you need to check yourself a little bit. And so it was actually a message I personally needed to hear.
Really?
Today.
Well, I'm glad we timed it out nicely then.
I am. Yeah. Thank you. You did that just for me. I know you did.
I tried. Really
and everyone
hard.
listening. But yeah, talk about our guest today.
Yeah, so today we had Lyndsey Fennelly on. And for those of you that don't know that name, she is a former Iowa State star basketball player, very active member of the Ames community in surrounding central Iowa. Happens to be married into the Fennelly family, so Bill is the head coach.
What a power move, by the way.
Oh, it's very smart. I like how she kept it low key too. She's like, I couldn't talk about it till after, her senior year. But so she's married to Billy, Bill's son, and just great family, great people all around. I got to know Lindsay probably about 5 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, and really through the George Niang stuff that she does, and just a great human being, but even more importantly, she's a great advocate for mental health.
Yep.
Being somebody that has gone through her own mental illnesses before and is still in the recovery.
Yep. No, her message was great. And we are talking about how the stigma is kind of being broken up a little bit and how it should. And she talked about the future and what she hopes for the future. And yeah, just what to look out for and how to take care of yourself. And it's very, very important, especially as we're coming off a pandemic. It's just a really hard time for people, but just in general too. Take care of yourselves, you guys. You're important and you're special, and we love you all. So,
and I think this podcast does a good job of giving people aspects of life on how to better themselves in that sense. I mean, at least from the guests that I remember through this, it's been really
listened to every single episode.
Just about all of them, yeah. I mean, outside of Lori's, I refuse to listen to Lori's.
Yeah. Good idea.
But no, I think this that's one area that I really appreciate about this podcast is we're constantly giving people ways to better themselves, not just, you know, in life, but mentally. I think mental health is such an important aspect, if not more important than your physical health. And so a really great message from her today. It's Mental Health Awareness Month in May, so we're wrapping things up there. And
it is. Yep.
Good stuff.
It is. Great stuff. Thank you for bringing her on, John, and hope you all have a great one and enjoy the episode. Bye. Awesome. So, Jealous Podcast. Yeah, we have someone sitting right next to me that has found themselves jealous of you.
Yeah, just a little bit. I mean, first off, I'm jealous that you got to go to the St. Louis Cardinals game a few weeks ago and meet Albert Pujols.
Are you a Cardinals fan?
No, but they met Albert Pujols.
That's amazing. I am. And I would have loved to have met him.
What was that? Really quick, what was that like?
So it's a crazy story. My sister, her and her husband own a sports performance training facility in LA. Albert is one of their clients. They work with a lot of professional athletes. Every year, I've never asked her for an autograph or an ask or a meet and greet. And I thought, you know what? It's Billy's birthday. It's Albert's last year as a Cardinal and obviously an MLB baseball player. It's about to be my son's birthday, and what mom doesn't need some extra brownie points right before Mother's Day? And so I asked. My sister was great about it. Got us tickets. He got my son a signed bat. We walked away with some balls, but the coolest part was just meeting him after the game and just the whole weekend experience there. He couldn't have been more gracious and kind. And I'd like to say it was for my son, but if you saw the picture, Billy looked like a kid in a candy store. Brownie points as well on the wife front for that one.
There you go.
That's awesome. The most famous person I met at a Cardinals game was not even a baseball player. It was, oh gosh, now I'm going to forget his name. Kenny. He's a NASCAR driver. What's his name? He used to be a NASCAR driver. Oh gosh, I'll come with it later. And I tweeted at him. I'm like, "Are you at this bar?" And he's like, "Yeah, I am. I love to meet fans." I'm like, "Oh my god."
On my way.
Yeah.
So it's always been interesting to me though how a California girl like yourself ends up in Ames, Iowa, playing basketball. How did you end up in Ames, Iowa?
Yeah, so it's a great Fennellyism to the story in that I was playing at an AAU tournament at an end of the Oregon Trail. It was a really popular tournament back then that young AAU basketball players would play in, and Coach Fennelly saw me and asked my coach afterwards, is there any way this kid from LA would even consider Iowa State? We have a lot of fans, we have a great conference, we have a good track record here. And apparently my coach said, as long as there's a gym, she'll go anywhere. And it just sort of kicked off the recruiting process. I was down to my final 10 schools, and I wrote all my options on one bar, and I wrote all the reasons of what I was looking for in a school in the other, and Iowa State was the only one that checked off all 10. So packed up my bags, headed to the West, thought I'd be here 4 years, met a boy, fell in love, and haven't really looked back since.
Iowa has a good way of getting people and just wrapping our arms around you guys and not letting you leave. And in fact, this is the second week in a row. Last week, our guest was also a California transplant, and she's here to stay. So, hey, I really like it.
Oh, I think it had to be a little bit of culture shock, though, right? When you got to the Midwest, there's no beaches. I mean, we have lakes, but I wouldn't classify that even close to what you guys probably had out there.
Our gas stations are famous for pizza. There's another one.
Right. Yeah. I remember getting here and the cold, I didn't understand. I got in trouble all the time for not wearing the appropriate clothing. I'd walk into Hilton where there was Johnny's. So, coach's office could see down the ramp that players would walk up to practice each day, and it'd be, -10, and I'd have on a sweatshirt and a pair of shorts and thought it was normal. And so I get in trouble for stuff like that, or forgetting to attend some classes early on in my career because I would rather just get the ticket and not go outside and deal with the snow. But, I remember when the very first time I ever saw what was apparently a combine, I thought it was called a combinator. And so for 4 years, I referred to combines as combinators, and until a senior classmate corrected me. But look, I fell in love with Obviously the people here, the atmosphere of Hilton, the camaraderie of Cyclone Nation, the kindness of Iowans. Like it just, I don't know. I was bought in from the moment I got here. And I always tell the quick story of there was a young family whose mother had just passed away, and coach encouraged us to go down and visit with this father, now a widowed dad, and his two boys, who were about 5 and 7. And I'll never forget the look on their face. They had just lost their mom, and all they wanted was to see some Iowa State players. And I remember thinking, man, playing basketball is one thing and putting a ball in a hoop is cool, but I bought into that idea of impacting people in a positive way, I think from early on.
And then you end up marrying Coach Fennelly's son, Billy.
Yeah, well, that story, we're not at Friday after work just yet. No, we quietly dated for most of our 4 years in school, and teammates knew, and I think some of the people on staff knew, and coach didn't really know until the end. We kind of broke the news to him. But
nice.
We'd always agreed that we would never, I never wanted him to have to answer that question in a press conference, right? Like, hey, I heard through the grapevine. I will also say it's better that we didn't have social media. Like, if everyone would have seen Lyndsey liking Billy Fennelly's tweets, 20 years ago, I think people might have been hot to trot and figuring out what was going on. But thank goodness we don't have social media. So yeah, we got married. Billy worked for Maryland for a year right out of college, and then for Northwestern for 2 years. And then I believe he's just finishing his 12th season back here in a more formal, non-obviously student role on his dad's staff.
So what's it been like to settle in as an Iowan? I mean, for you to embrace this place called home now?
I can't remember. I think it was my mother-in-law, Deb. She said, hey, I said, hey, can you help me, with something with the kids? And she said, yeah. I said, I'm going to do this podcast with John Schaefer. And she said, oh, the TV guy, does that then go on our TVs? And I'm like, no, new job, blah, blah. And she goes, well, what hat is that for? And I go, what do you mean, what hat? And I think it's indicative of the lifestyle that I have here, which is still owning Elite 360, a training business, still having somewhat a full-time job, volunteering and running events like the Georgian Yang golf outing, trying to be a present mom and wife, and obviously a mental health advocate, which I know we'll touch on as well. But I think that's a testament more to Iowa than it is me. Like, there are so many different things I love about this place, and I love about our community here that I got no problem wearing 5 different hats because they all bring, a lot of joy to my world.
And let's tie that in. You hit on the mental health aspect of things. I remember when you first told me your story about kind of how everything played out, and you do wear a lot of hats and you take pride in going 100% in everything you do. Was that kind of a catalyst for when you might have realized something wasn't quite right?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like my therapist sent you a text before this and was like, hey, ask her this question right now.
No therapists involved today.
I think and it's true to my condition. It's also, I think, true to how a lot of people feel, especially athletes who maybe lack that identity, opportunity right out of school, is like, who are you without basketball? And so what I've found for me is the more I do, the less I have to be. And so it's not something I'm saying is the best course of action. But I definitely think it's part condition. It's also part conditioned, right? You're taught as an athlete to do more than your fair share. And next scouting report, next game, next this. I am so good at the next. I am awful at the now. And so that's part of what I work through. And that's why I wondered if my therapist had hit you up prior to this meeting.
That's interesting. So yeah, you don't, when you have downtime, you just don't. How do you
have
deal
downtime?
with that? Yeah. Do you allow yourself to have downtime? Good question.
Yeah, I mean, it's a part of my self-care 101. It's looking at a calendar and making sure I work out every day. I don't enjoy cooking, so it's not like when I get in the kitchen, I'm like, all right, here we go. I'm usually like, oh, hey, Billy, someone's calling. I really have to pick this up, and then I let him finish. And it's hard too as a parent, right? Because let's say you get off the normal working hours now that you and I, John, are in the normal work world, hours wise. Like, you get done with work, let's say Friday at 3:00, your kids are just coming home from school then. And so now you got to be locked in as a parent. And so I think it's really easy for people to fall off track if we don't, me included, sort of have those boundaries and non-negotiables in place of sleeping properly every night and working out and, not using drugs and alcohol to mask how you feel and talking openly with your feelings. So those are some of my simple non-negotiables that if I can check those things off daily, then, despite wearing a bunch of different hats, the train continues to run on its tracks.
And then, I mean, social media, you kind of hit on social media back then. It's probably a good thing, but nowadays social media, I feel like can act as a mask for people, and they only show you the highlights, right? And I think when I look back at your social media, you looked like your family was the best thing in the world. You guys were extremely happy, and then something just kind of clicked and it clicked out of place.
Yeah, and I think that's what, when I really look back at, sort of kind of recap, I've been hospitalized twice, once in 2013 and then another time in 2018. And I remember in the hospital in 2013, I didn't have my phone, but I remember trying to convince the nurses and the doctors to let me show you my Twitter account. Like, let me show you how many followers I have.
Oh my
and
gosh.
This is a cause and effect of like why there's nothing wrong with me. Or I tapped out on Facebook friends at 5,000 in 2010, like not really intentionally, but I just kept hitting add friend every time they would say confirm or deny. And so I should probably clean that up someday. But I think there's been this shift now in the stigma and dropping the veil. I remember when I was hospitalized the second time in 2018, this time for 21 days, I was very almost craving my social media. Like, let me make up some positive quote to make it seem like I had my what together when I'm in actually a unit that doesn't allow for sheets because they're afraid you're going to strangle yourself.
Wow.
And that's how the juxtaposition of let me put on this front and let me create this identity and just kind of keep feeding that machine and that beast so that nobody knows that I'm in here. And of course, no one on my care team, family included, gave me my phone for those 3 weeks. So I couldn't do anything with it. But looking back, I think that's a big piece of, I think where some people will say, we see those, I think it was the 4 recent suicides in the student athletes in the collegiate world.
Yeah.
And people will say things like, well, I didn't see it coming. Well, because all you did was hit double tap on their picture every other week. Like, that didn't mean you saw that person. You didn't ask them, what were they challenged with or what are they struggling with? And so I think that's one of my biggest messages is really, we got to get to the core of who people are and what they're dealing with, because social media paints such a picture of BS. And I've been a sort of a caveat of that as well.
I love that you say that too. Everything is so curated these days because, I just feel like the competition out there, and we talk about social media a lot as it relates to the podcast jealousy. Like, it's just people competing in this weird space, and it's like, what are you competing for? And it just, I don't know. I mean, I love to get on there and share family or whatever, but we were even talking about it in a meeting this morning. It's like, I don't know. What is the point? It's just crazy how out of control it has gotten.
Well, and here's the hard thing. Like, the George Niang basketball camp will happen this summer. It'll be his 7th basketball camp, and it's already sold out. Yeah. And it 100% gets driven by social media.
Oh.
I created, opened, started, ran a beat-driven spin studio that sold at the height of the pandemic for a pretty good profit, and we didn't pay $1 in marketing. We 100% use social media. So it's such a balancing act.
Oh, certainly.
But it's like what I go back to all the time is like, I have experienced enough professional success to realize it's also created personal hurt and trying to figure out where is that threshold of what am I willing to give everybody else in exchange for, maybe my own happiness or mindset.
Yeah, exactly. And I can't crap on it too much because it's what we do literally every single day, and it's important.
I think you're right, though. I think people are starting to lift that veil up a little bit and be a little bit more vulnerable with whoever might be following them, just as kind of an outlet to say, maybe I'm not okay. And I think that might be an important aspect of if you're giving those cues to somebody that might reach back out to you to check on you, I think it's an important aspect.
Yeah, and I think there's, we also have to be careful. We can't tell everyone we'll get off social media. Well, for certain people, especially in the pandemic, like that became their social, and or someone with a social anxiety disorder is going to say, hey, I'm not going to walk into a room full of people, but I'm going to retweet my favorite actress. And that like kind of makes me feel good about myself. And so, I think, that word balance is probably not shared enough.
So for you, what was the biggest part of your recovery? What allowed you to be where you're at right now, and in a place where you are able to have the life you want with your family, with your businesses, and still enjoying life at the same time?
Yeah, I always tell people this is the most unfair part of my story, and that's my support team. My husband has visited. I was 15 days the first time, 21 days the second time. He was up there during visiting hours every single day. He never one time, and I think because of probably because of his congenital heart defect and his own dealing with a lifelong condition, probably changes his view compared to other people. And so I think that he sort of led the way in that. But look, like, I don't know how to say this in a weird way. I know who my father-in-law is, right? I see him as the grandparent of my kids and my former coach. I don't see him as Bill Fennelly. Mm-hmm. But when I knew that Bill Fennelly was walking the halls of the 6th floor of Mary Greeley, a lot of those days as well, and coming up there and making it seem like it was no big deal that he was there, that means something to me. And my mother-in-law and my, the list goes on. And so it sounds like a lot of people, there's really sort of this tight circle of probably 7 to 8 people that were so invested in my recovery, which the first time just meant like, let's get her out of the hospital and let's kind of quietly put this under a rug, because nobody really understood it in 2013. And that was sort of the direction I was giving to. Then in 2018, my in-laws moving in with Billy and helping with the kids and trying to keep their lives as much on track as possible without mom around for those 3 weeks. So I would say, the having people that look at you no differently. If I cough on you, it's not contagious. If I hug you, it's not transferable. But it's an illness that requires people around you to pretty consistently say, hey, I see you, I acknowledge you, and I'm in your corner no matter what. They've done that from the beginning and continue to do it to this day.
That's amazing. So then, as you started to recover, and I know recovery is an ongoing thing, but what made you decide to start to advocate and to put yourself in front of crowds and in front of people to talk about this openly? I mean, it's a very brave thing to do, first of all. So I just have to applaud you for that. It's brave, and it's so selfless, because people need to hear it from people like you, right? So what made you decide? I'm sure it wasn't just you woke up one morning and you're like, I'm going to go talk to a bunch of people about this, but kind of talk to us about that.
Yeah, good question. I don't, it's one of the things I probably don't do enough in anything I touch, that I don't step back and reflect, like, how did I get here? Like, how did I get to the point where I've shared my story to over 12,000 people, largely most of them Iowans, been able to have so many different, 1 minute it's a school, and then the next day it's an organization, and the next day it's a nonprofit. It really organically started. But what happened was I got out of the hospital April 26, 2018. And a couple days later, George Niang called me, and George, not to name drop, but most people know George.
Kind of a big deal.
And so George and I, as John has seen before, we were on this camp, we were on this golf outing, and they're both really fun, engaging events that literally came out of George and I meeting at the end of his senior year. And I see George is calling, and I'm like, Billy, does George know where I've been the last couple weeks? And he said, no, he's responded, Billy had taken my phone and responded to some texts, and he said, I told him, hey, Lindsay isn't available for a couple weeks. She'll hit you up when she's, feeling better. George is, okay, Billy. And so long story short, I have a conversation with George, my lips quivering. I, at this point, had told literally no one that I was in the hospital. I had told no one why I was in there. And he said, look, you got to tell me what's going on. Like, things seem to be weird over there. We're in the middle of camp and golf outing planning. Like, you've been super not available, which is not like you. And I said, I just taking some time to like trying to gloss over it, right? Talk around it and not address it. And so finally he's like, you need to tell me what's going on or we're not going to do this anymore. And I said, all right, well, here's my condition. Here's why I was in the hospital. I'm going to take 2.5 pills every day for the rest of my life. I'm going to always see a therapist. And there you go. And it was like dead silent for 5 seconds. And I'm like, oh my God, I've lost George. Like we're done. And his next comment was, oh, so is that why you send me all those emails at like 2 or 3 in the morning? Your brain can never shut off. And you just have all these ideas for our next, camp, and totally normalized it. And I remember being like, George, I just appreciate you saying that. Like I've literally told no one. At this point, we're both crying. And I hang up the phone. I remember thinking, man, like if Big George can embrace me, I'll tell anybody. Like, I got him in my corner. Yeah. I'm good. And so a couple weeks later, I posted something about being away for a couple weeks and taking some time and dealing with a mental illness for the first time, and then posted a couple more times. Like it's been super organic. I have no plan with it. I am in the midst of writing a book to try and at least put it all in one place. But I just kind of responded to every ask that comes my way for sharing my story, and it's kind of taken off from there.
And it being May, it's Mental Health Awareness Month, and so I mean we're seeing it more and more. You brought up the college athletes that were dealing with it and unfortunately passed away because of it. I mean, how important do you feel like it is to continue breaking that stigma of it's okay to talk about mental health? You need to know that you're not okay, and it's okay to not be okay.
Yeah, I think those are all, you've hit on all of them. And I think we have to keep the conversation going. Like, I've always told people if I was diagnosed with cancer, I would stand on the biggest, tallest mountain and tell everybody to raise money, to raise awareness, to raise support. Mental illness is killing people by the minute. And I think the other thing for me, John, and I think you knowing me a little bit better kind of gives you this perspective of like, it can also happen to people like me,
right?
Who live in a nice house, drive a nice car, who are married to arguably one of the more recognizable names in this state. Like, I think for me, the vision of mental illness was always deranged, unhappy, under a blanket, suicidal, so many different avenues that never had a happy ending. And I guess that's part of why I also wanted to talk was I wanted to show people that you could still have a happy ending. And I'm far from over, and I am constantly on recovery mode. And certainly don't think I'm out of the woods, but I think that's the message I want to share with people is like, you can battle this thing. It's not beatable, but it's treatable. And that's kind of one of my bigger messages.
I really love that because anytime, I don't know, I'm saying these days, we all know someone that is affected by it, whether it is ourselves, whether it is our family, whether it's our friends, someone is dealing with something at some level. Just because, how could you not, especially in 2022, after 2 years solid of a pandemic? I mean, people are going through stuff. And I love how you talk about recovery being constant. So people need to hear that, okay, I can go through this. It's not like I check a box and it's gone, poof. And if the feelings start to come back, it's not like I failed. You've definitely not failed. It just happens. So I think that's very, very important. I think it's, we've had mental health professionals on this podcast before too. And exactly like you said, if you have a stomach ache for 2 weeks, you go to the doctor to figure out what's going on. If things just don't feel right, here and here, you need to go get that checked out because mental health is just as important, if not more, than as physical health. So very, very, very important.
Yeah. Well, and it's funny, I told Billy last night, we were in conversation, we kind of unexpectedly and very quickly had a house sale this spring leading into summer, and it also happens to be around almost the exact same day as all the George Niang stuff this summer.
Oh boy.
And
nicely timed.
As we're trying to figure all this out, like, can you also remember I'm the one with the mental illness? Like, I think that's the other thing is people who seem to then put a lot on their shoulders and they carry it well. And wow, Lindsay's on this podcast and speaking at this school. Like, whoa. Let's all remember where this all started. Like, I still need that same support too. Yeah. And so, I think it's a key message that, you can't see it. You can't feel it, you can't touch it, but you can hear it. And I think that comes in daily conversations with the people you care and love about is, how are you doing? And really finding that out.
So what do you tell people who might not feel like, have whatever it is, that mental illness, a cue that just doesn't feel right? What do you tell people that might come up to you and say, Lindsay, you really struck home with me. I haven't felt right about something.
Yeah, I mean, I have a couple. Like, I think self-care is super important. Daily shower, workout consistently, sleep 7 to 8 hours. Before I was ever officially diagnosed, I would sleep 2 to 3 hours a night because that's what success looked like.
Gosh.
And I was a high functioning, non-sleeping individual. But again, because I was successful, I just kept doing it because that's what you're supposed to do, right? It's the next thing to post on LinkedIn and the next update to give on Facebook. But I think talking to a professional is probably the most important, first and safest step, and making sure that whether that's a therapist who's going to talk a lot about feelings, whether it's a psychiatrist who could involve some medication, and really get more specific into diagnosis. But then I get a lot of pushback because people say we're one of the worst in the country of bed availability and provider options. And so that's a hard one too. And so I keep encouraging people just to talk about it with your family, with your friends, with your loved one, in that vein.
And do you talk at all? I know you with the Georgia Yang camp, and you have athletes as well. Do you talk to them at all about just being mentally healthy as well?
I do, and I think the biggest shift that I've given to young people recently has been just the awareness of our phones and social media. Like, I would guess among the three of us, we didn't grow up with a phone next to our bedside.
Mm-hmm.
I would guess we walked out of school at 3 o'clock on a Thursday, and we saw and talked to our friends Friday at 8 a.m. These kids walk out of school at 3 p.m. on a Thursday, and at 3:05 they got 3 different Snapchat groups they're supposed to respond to, and this streak story to keep alive, and it's 3:09 and they haven't responded. So then the other friend side texts them, and then the other friend indirect tweets about them, and you're just like, it's not even 3:10. They haven't been out of school 10 minutes, and you've already been pinged,
right?
10 different times. So we, I don't have the answers because who does in the cell phone and social media world? But I think just again that awareness and talking to them. So, if I see a kid walking into the gym with their phone in their hand, I'll call them out on it. I'll talk to them about, hey, are you taking breaks? When was the last time you used do not disturb on your phone? Just encouraging of that. And then they'll usually be like, well, what about you? And I'm like, you little.
You can't turn this on me. Don't even try it. I really like that. And I know I've always said, I have 2 little boys and another baby on the way. And I always say, like, I hope it blows up before they're able to use it. And I don't really mean that, but I kind of mean that. But on the other side of it, what about, I want to talk about the athletes a little bit and how they're out there, or maybe their coaches allow them to be out there, maybe not. But on the other side, the fans that are keyboard warriors that feel like they can say anything to these kids. Like, do you ever talk to athletes or anything about that? Like the messages that they're receiving from these faceless, nameless trolls. I'll just call them exactly what they are, because it's crap, but
I remember when I first started a relationship with both Naz, Meecher Long, and George. Towards the end of kind of their career, we just, I don't know, the three of us like hit it off super well. And so I brought this up to him because it was kind of still on the cusp of, but you'd have these made up accounts that would reach out to him. And I remember one of them, I don't remember which one, was like, yeah, if you don't think after games, I'm not searching my name to see what they post. And then I remember like 5 years later, we kind of joked about, I was like, do you still like check on those like that after games? And he's like, hell no, I don't got time for that. So I think there's like a maturity, phase that certainly people go through with that. And you almost have to. I mean, I know my father-in-law has been hit up before. I know I've received stuff over the years. But it's usually more good than bad. But I think for athletes, it just goes back to that like super important word of boundaries. Like you can tell people no. And you can block those people out, or, you can block them in some way, or, and I think that's part of the message that I think gets confusing for athletes. And I even get confused as I say it out loud of like, I'm supposed to serve my community and I'm supposed to give, 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 give. But then that means I'm giving up time with my family because I don't have any boundaries. And so everybody in Ames who wants to see or talk to George then comes to me on all that, you know what I mean? And it just kind of spiral. So I'm kind of a bad critic in my own circus of doing things how I'd love them to be done.
Well, it's interesting too, and I know we've talked about the NIL stuff maybe a lot more, and I talk about it maybe a lot more than I should because I don't understand it completely. But that's where they have to be, is on social media, because that's where they're building this brand. So they really don't have a choice if they want to pursue that path. So, I mean, I think there's a lot of nuance to all. I mean, it's a layered, hairy deal, and I don't know where it's going to go.
And I mean, we'd be lying if we didn't say the game's changed quite a bit since you were a player. And I mean, you've kind of seen it firsthand, especially with Billy being part of the recruiting processes and all that kind of stuff. You've seen the evolution as a coach yourself too.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the NIL is scary because there's no restriction on it. Again, not to keep bringing up George, but I'll never forget George played his senior year at the United Center in Chicago, played against Virginia in the Sweet 16, lost. And we had already had conversations about our camp, but we technically couldn't post or talk about it. And I was not excited that they won, but I also knew like, oh, we could actually see if this camp would fly. And I feel like George and I were really kind of the first ones to, tap into the NIL, although we had to wait until after after his career had ended. But I remember looking around like all these Iowa State fans, tears in their eyes and da-da-da. And I'm like, emailing my website guy, you got 24 hours, that better be ready. We launched the website the next day and his first camp sold out within literally hours. And so it was awesome. But, I think that's the scary thing with the NIL is that there's no one regulating it on the athlete side. Like, I'll never forget a couple years into camp, George called and was like, hey, my accountant just said something about I got to pay some of this money back. And I'm like, that's taxes. Yeah. So I think that's some of the NIL conversation is there's not a lot of people who I think are probably guiding these guys in the right way and also going to these businesses and figuring out how to do it. So if I wanted to wear one more hat, I could probably become an NIL person here in Ames, but I am committed to less is more at this stage.
Well, that's good. If you ever change your mind,
just hit us up.
Yeah.
We can get going on that.
All right, perfect.
That's so funny. I'll name drop Niang as well because my husband's been walking around with this brand new blue jersey with Niang on the back.
Oh, really?
And really showing it off to the kids. And he won't wear it to daycare drop off. Okay. So if you see Jeff, give him a really hard time. I'm like, nice jersey.
Really, just to kind of put it full circle, what's it mean to have George? Naz comes back, I know, too. And, Fred Hoiberg is back in town every once in a while. All these people tied to Iowa State athletics, but also your circle too. Guys like George, guys like Coach Fennelly, Billy, all of them. What's it mean to have that circle just be there constantly for you and understand and be willing to continue to help you on your recovery?
It means a lot. I don't look at them any differently because one's my father-in-law and one's my husband and one's my Iowa State ex-athlete behind Naz. I'll make sure George hears that. But I think it also just cements what a community can do for someone who's struggling. And again, from the outside looking in, how would I struggle? And I think that's where the message has to be. It has this illness, it doesn't target you based on race, based on gender, based on sexual orientation, based on socioeconomic status. It can affect anyone. It will affect 1 in 5 people. And so to have people around you that are so strong and so committed and so open to talk about things that our general society has been really weird about talking about. certainly means a lot.
And I know I saw you were at a banquet the other night a couple of weeks ago for Mary Greeley. Those folks there have done a great job, obviously, and we have all the support system we need if you do need help, right?
Yeah, and I think that's, like the first big gigantic step is being able to say, I need help. And then allowing the trusted professionals to say, okay, for this person, she needs an ER admittance and a 6th floor behavioral stay for a couple weeks. This person needs some medication to sleep better at night. This person needs some ongoing therapy to address. But, it's kind of, I think it was said earlier, like at what point in everyone's lives does someone not say, hey, you know what, I'm going to need help?
Yeah.
A divorce, a marriage, a transition, a move, a loss of somebody you love. Like we haven't even talked about grief. But that I was taught as an athlete, you suppress everything that doesn't feel good and you move on to the next thing. And so I've never dealt with grief well. And so, yeah, I think we all at some point are going to need to reach out and say, I need help. And, so many companies offer the EAP, the employee assistance programs. Most insurance will cover, stays, or even if you're looking for something else, there's a lot of telehealth resources.
Right.
Talkspace, I know, is one of them. I know they're not official sponsors of your podcast, so I probably shouldn't name any others.
You're fine.
And you guys can NIL.
All the help we can give people, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think there's a lot out there for people, but people also have to be willing to say, hey, you know what, I need help.
Yeah, the first step's always the hardest, in anything that you do, and that's certainly the case here too. Yep. What is your hope, as I think we are, as a society, hopefully taking steps to hopefully get rid of the stigma, but what are your hopes just for the future, and for even, youth and anyone dealing with this? Kind of, where do you hope this goes? What would be best case scenario?
Man, it's a great question. I could probably get emotional when I say this. Is that I wish people wouldn't get to the end and give up. Yeah. Like there are so many other outlets. There are so many other resources. There are so many people that love them. I know what it feels like to hit rock bottom. Like there's not enough time on this podcast for me to illustrate the depths of how I felt as an individual, as a business owner, as a mom, as a friend, as a wife. I literally felt at the bottom of the barrel. And I think that's a place that a lot of people get to. And if people would just give themselves one more chance or give someone they trust one more chance, we can all lose a game, but to turn in your jersey or to go to a place that there's no coming back from, like that's what I would love for, because I know we can't escape those dark thoughts and those ugly feelings. And I don't know if you guys saw this, the Winona Ryder's mom, Naomi Judd,
Yes.
Mom, literally getting inducted the next day into the Musical Hall of Fame.
Jeez. Right.
And it's and you think of, again, outside looking in, and that's why I think that's honestly probably why I've been more public than I had maybe intended to, was I recognize that my touch on athletes or my Twitter following or my last name carried enough weight to make people look at this disease in a super different light, and that being it can hit anyone, and it will more people than we probably know.
Yeah, and you're right about Winona Judd. Like, I'm glad that the daughters came out with the statement that they did come out with. They didn't have to, They could have not said anything about her struggle with mental health, but they chose to do that. And I'm so glad that they did, because you're right. She was being inducted into the Hall of Fame, the Music Hall of Fame. That's the top, right? So it can, yeah. and it will if it's let untreated. So yeah.
So what's next for you? What you said you're working on a book. What kind of moving exciting. Forward? What else is on the docket for Lyndsey Fennelly?
Oh man! Again, I feel like you're my therapist. Billy and I about once we we're calling it the YOL, so the year of Lindsay, where I tried to actually remove a lot of the professional commitments I have, and just focus on myself and wake up and go for a walk and wake up and have a cup of coffee after the kids go to school. And I mean, if I could show you guys my calendar, it like, I think my therapist has access, but I think I actually blocked her from it like 6 months ago, feeling, things are going to pick up again. And so I think I have that exciting, gratifying feeling of when I can accomplish tasks and do things and tackle projects. But then I also don't want to look back and be like, well, wait, I missed a whole summer with our kids in the last house, the only home they've ever known. And so the year of Lindsay is on the horizon. I don't know when it officially begins, or what that's going to look like. But I saw Brene Brown, who's a very, very well-known author. She's taking a whole 3-month sabbatical this summer. No social media, no emails, no. And in a weird way, I wish I could only like dabble into one or two things, but I'm kind of all or nothing. So I'm almost thinking maybe once I get through all the George stuff this summer, that I consider doing something like that again kind of allows me to live out more mentally where I want to be and what I talk about, but what I don't give a ton of space for up to this point.
That's awesome. Incredible.
So check in on me in a couple months.
I'm glad I got in touch with you then when I did. Yeah. Otherwise, we could have been just total radio silence for a little bit here with you. Year of Lindsay.
We're not doing full podcasts.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. No, I still do it. I just be like, hey, I just had some coffee and went on a walk. What do you guys want to talk about?
How nice! I know the beauty of an open calendar.
That sounds lovely.
Oh man, my calendar's opened up as of recently, and I think everyone can see it on my face around here.
Just a little bit. You got a little more energy in your step.
I am a happier person. I am a healthier person because of it. Wow. Amazing.
Well, man. Thank you so much for doing this, Lindsay. I really do appreciate it. I know you have a busy schedule right now, and but I think the message you share with everyone is such an important one to really hit on, regardless of if it's May or not. Mental health is not just a one-off. It's constantly there, and so you really have to address it. And I think everything you've done is just so commendable, and it's been awesome to see.
Yes.
Well, I appreciate it. It was good to see you both today, and whenever this is done, certainly would love to share it with friends and family and followers along the way. So I appreciate you guys having me on, and have a good rest of your May.
Yeah, say hi to Bill for me and Billy. I miss those two greatly. So
amazing. Well, thank you so much, Liz. It was so nice to meet you, and I'm really, really glad I got to be a part of this conversation. So thank you so much.
Awesome. Thanks. You guys.